Amanda Cruce is a doctoral student at the University of Pittsburgh School of Social Work. She holds an MSW from the University of Texas at Arlington and a BA in International Studies from Austin College in Texas. Prior to returning to school, Amanda was a foster parent in Florida and worked to enhance the child welfare system, improving the culture surrounding LGBTQ plus youth, normalcy, foster parent engagement, birth parent involvement, and teen voice. Please put your hands together for Amanda Cruce.
Thank you. I'm too short to figure out where to stand on the stage, so we're just going to go with this. I'm sorry. Yeah, let's do that. We're going to go to the other microphone. Okay, thank you. Okay. I think this is better. Thank you. First up, I would love it if you could come and give that presentation to my teens. I think gratitude journaling and all of those different things, and as not a Pittsburgh native, I will not be going on a walk of gratitude up all of the hills. I don't think there are any downhills. It does feel like it's all up Ramesh. I think about that all the time when I'm walking around on campus. One thing that I think about a lot when I think about flourishing is kind of what brought me back to academia. I spent a long time in the field. I got my master's over almost 20 years ago, so that feels like a really long time to then come back and say, I'm going to come back and get a PhD. 15 years ago, my wife and I decided to become foster parents, and we had really struggled trying to figure out how to give back and support the community and to really support LGBTQ youth, especially those entering foster care or having a hard time at home. And it was really hard for us to decide what system of oppression we decided to join to help youth, because there was no way to naturally or organically do some of the support. My wife grew up in informal foster care and was raised by her neighbors after she came out at home and her parents were not accepting. My parents were always that family that, like, there was no formal system involvement, but if there was a kid in need, they were always living at our house. We had I don't know, that was just kind of our culture. So foster care felt like the right place to go. The year we started fostering was the year that they first allowed openly gay people to adopt in Florida. So it was not a super accepting place. We were not coming in as foster parents and everybody saying, we're so happy to have you here. It was a little more tense than that. Our licensing classes took place at a church that on Sunday was one of the most conservative churches in town, frequently having sermons that were really anti-LGBTQ, anti-rights in general, anti-diversity. And then on Tuesdays, they'd open it up and say, come on in and get your foster care license. Most of the friends and family that we had that were also gay were like, why would you do that? Don't do that. Like, just live your life, have kids if you want, you don't have to be foster parents. But then what would happen to the 30% of gay youth that were in foster care and that were living in group homes or having to go to church every Sunday that didn't accept them, and what would that look like? So we did it anyway. Lots of awkward experiences. And we knew at that time the best way to impact for youth in care was to listen to the youth and to listen to their voice and do what they needed. We were sure of it. We had the answer. So we were there. We were working with the youth. We had youth in our home. We did, I guess we were kind of known as like a youth that were the highest behaviors, help them stabilize, help them meet families, and get adopted quickly or go home quickly. We were not like a long, languishing place to live. And it went great, and we were working with the youth. I also am a little ADHD and a social worker, so I was also running youth empowerment programs for youth in foster care. So every summer, we would run a program. It was about a week long, and 100 youth were sent from all over the state to participate in this program, and many of them identified on the LGBTQ spectrum, and would participate in this. And we were doing a great job, according to us, right? No white savior issues here at all, right? We got to be humble about where we're coming from and what we're doing, but that's where we were at that moment. And time goes on, and it's going great, and we start to realize, and this is for all the social workers in the room, you can laugh at us, kids need their families, even when they're not super accepting. Any level of acceptance is better for kids than no level of acceptance. And child welfare was not there at that point. There was no work. If a family said, I've kicked my kid out, they came out as gay, they came out as transgender, they may not live here, the child welfare system wasn't saying, let's do family therapy. They weren't saying, how can we restore this family? They were saying, would you like to terminate your rights so we can get your child adopted by someone who supports their identity? And that didn't help kids' mental health. That didn't help flourishing. That didn't help well-being. And then we started to see that the work we were doing with families, just in having a phone call, just in letting them see, maybe for the first time, an openly gay relationship being successful. Both my wife and I had jobs. We were, doing things and living in the world and like having dinner with my parents and having, there were things that other families had never even seen or considered as possible for their children. And then we were like, then we had the answer. The answer was actually families. So now we knew it wasn't always the kid voice, it was the family voice. And so we started doing different work. I got really involved at some federal levels, going and doing consulting about family voice. How do we get family voice more involved at policy levels? How do we work with families to get kids home? What can this look like differently? Because families are the answer. Hopefully the parents, but if not the parents, the grandparents and the aunts and uncles, and how are we getting this involved? So we spent years really involved with family voice and doing advocacy work and working with them and still fostering, because again, I have ADHD and I can't just do one thing. Throughout all of this time, I think we had about 60 kids through our home, and I'd say 50 of them returned home to families. And again, we were really known for that. It was our cycle. But there was no real space to do all these things together. And so as we're going with birth families, and particularly we worked a lot with dads, and we're doing this federal work, going state to state, helping states understand how to integrate parent voice into the system, the biggest thing we heard that were barriers for parents were foster parents, who we still were. And there was this aha moment, and now we knew that we needed to help educate foster parents to be better at working with birth parents and working with teens and getting everyone home. So we start doing that. And I guess we had kind of always done that, because for the work with the youth, I was involved in like the National Foster Parent Association, and usually that like one voice in the room that was kind of anti-foster parent even while living in the space. And like, how can we do better? How can we push ourselves to be better? How can we as foster parents be the catalyst that gets kids home? So we really were focused on that and have done some great work. And we've been doing, one of our biggest campaigns right now is about how do we recruit foster parents. And it's really difficult, so we have some federal legislation that's up right now saying that foster parents should be recruited based on the demographics of the youth in the area that you're fostering. So you can't just go to one church and say, great, you have 50 people that want to foster, they can all do it. You go to a community and you say, we know we have 30% LGBTQ children, and we know we have 27% African American children. How are we making sure that our foster parent community is mirroring that? So we were doing that, and we are doing that, and it's going great. And then we realize none of these voices are actually talking to each other. So then we knew the only solution is to have all three voices in the room at the same time, to come up with a solution. Because the youth themselves can't have a solution to flourish for their families. The families can't necessarily have all the answers for their child to flourish. Foster parents, I don't know, we just have to be their support. I don't know that we have answers for flourishing at all. How are we all in the same room? So I went to the people I was consulting for at the federal government and lots of other groups, and I'm like, okay, let's have a convening, let's get everyone in the same room, and I think we'll have the answers. And they said, no, that's ridiculous. Where is the research to support that? Where is one paper that says lived experience from all these people in the same room will fix anything? I'm like, okay, fine, I'll go back to school and I'll write that one paper. And so I come back to school, and this has been my goal, lived experience to impact well-being and flourishing in the same room at the same time. I'm about to enter year 5, and I have 0 papers on it because the silos are so high, and nobody actually wants those 3 voices in the room at the same time. I mean, researchers do and people do, but there is so much institutional stigma and bias where these three groups are taught to fear and mistrust and not flourish. And it has been maybe one of the shocks of my life, that no matter the money, no matter the funder, the groups you get involved that believe this, and all of these groups in child welfare have consultants from each of these demographics, right? I know lots of young adult consultants in the child welfare system, and lots of foster parent consultants, and lots of birth parent consultants. But at the policy table, we're always sitting at different tables. We're brought to different meetings. We present at different things. And so the flourishing is hampered because lived experience isn't in the room. The lived experience together making those decisions. So I'm working on my PhD and my dissertation, and while I couldn't get everyone together, my biggest focus right now is how do we actually let these populations define flourishing for themselves? Because the metrics, even though I think that they are great, I don't know that the dimensions are what a queer youth in foster care would define as flourishing is the same thing that's on most of our surveys. So that's what I'm focused on right now, and I'm working with a group of youth at Hugh Lane. I don't know if any of you know that Hugh Lane, but they're wonderful. We have 20 youth that come every week for the month of March, and we are working through what is flourishing for them, how can we define it, and how can we then take that to institutions and help them get there. In a fantasy world, we will get all of those populations together because I'm sure that that's the answer. Thank you.